On the consulting side, it's helping companies to build their customer experience journey or their employee experience journey. And we primarily focus on the first 100 days because the research shows the first 100 days of a relationship are the most important time in the entire relationship, whether that's customers or employees.
Sure.
And the research also shows that a significant number of people will decide to quit you, as the kids say, in that first 100 days. It's 20 to 70% on the customer side, depending on your organization.
Martians landed.
Yes.
Wearing Prada suits.
Yes.
Drinking Henry Seltzer.
Yes.
Chewing juicy fruit.
Yes, and?
Your branding here.
Yes, brand.
Your message here.
Yes, and?
A verse about
Yes.
your product here.
Yes.
I'm Hersh Redmond.
Yes, and?
I'm a message therapist.
Yes.
And I have a podcast.
Yes, brand.
That's right, that's it.
Yes.
We'll help you fix the world.
Yes.
Or your bottom line.
All right.
Your bottom line.
Get it. I get it. Welcome to the Yes Brand Podcast.
With us on the Brand Voice runway today is Joey Coleman. Joey is a successful author and works in we actually said this before we started. There's a couple of areas of interest. I would say if you're trying to learn how to never lose a customer again, Joey's the man to talk to. And probably if you never want to lose an employee again, Joey's the person to talk to. And we're going to speak with him about both today. Welcome, Joey Coleman, to Brand Voice Runway.
Oh, Hersh, thanks so much for the invitation. I so appreciate it. And thanks to everybody who's kind enough to listen in or watch in, as it may be. Super excited for our conversation.
It's great to have you here. We have a growing audience, which I'm very excited about. And I actually do want to throw a shout out to our early supporters. This is part of the Yes Brand family of podcasts, and we debuted within the top 100 for Apple Podcasts on entrepreneurship, and we're in the top 5% now, only a few weeks in on listen notes for Apple Podcasts. And so we couldn't be more happy, and it's fun to watch the numbers grow every day. And I think that's because people are finding that there's more than one way to skin a cat. There's more than one way to grow your business. Joey's going to talk to us a little bit about solopreneurship as well. I do want to quickly mention that his new book, How to Never Lose an Employee Again, or Never Lose an Employee Again. Never lose an employee again. Yep. Never lose an employee again.
The how is in the book. The title is Never Lose an Employee Again,
right,
but you'll learn the how inside the pages with over 50 case studies.
Yeah, if I were an English teacher, I would have corrected me already and said it's not how to never, it's how never to. How never to lose.
I love it.
Never Lose an Employee Again by Joey Coleman has been out just for a couple of months at this point, and it's a follow-up to his evergreen book, Never Lose a Customer Again. So, Joey, let's dive into this. Starting your own business, being a solopreneur is a very different experience than having a company with a bunch of employees or a big factory, something that may have a ton of online customers. How did you come to create this cottage industry of yours?
Well, it's interesting, Hersh. I have had an incredibly eclectic career. I was trained as a criminal defense lawyer. I worked in the intelligence community for the Secret Service, the CIA. I worked in the White House Office of Counsel to the President. I did business consulting for Fortune 100 and Fortune 500 companies. I taught at the postgraduate level, think like night school MBA stuff. I've had a varied path, but what took me to becoming an entrepreneur was a strong belief about how businesses should be run. And I thought, if I have all these opinions and ideas about how businesses should be run, maybe I should put my money where my mouth is and try to start my own. And so back in 2001, as we're kind of in the cusp of leading into a new century, my thought was, what can I do to put a shingle out and see what happens? And so I started as a brand experience business. looking at everything from logo design to web design, ad campaigns, cultural consulting. How can you create a solid brand experience, which is obviously fitting for the Yes Brand crew, and then take that brand and expand it to the audiences that you hope to serve and hope to gather their attention and their interest from?
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, to unpack the part about your background as a criminal defense attorney and working in the White House, had I known that, I could have put you on the spot. I could have said, okay, Joey Coleman is here today. He's going to tell us, after working in the White House, how businesses should be run. And now we're going to tell.
I will say this, Hersh. It
Yeah.
is incredibly difficult to run a country. If there's
Yeah.
one thing I learned during my time in the White House, which I truly enjoyed, it is a job where at any given time, half the country is furious at what you're doing, and the other half doesn't care what you're doing, right? You're kind of fighting uphill battles literally all day, every day. That being said, there are certainly opportunities and room for improvement and growth and enhancement in the experience of government operations and how government interacts with citizens, and frankly, how the people in this country interact with their government. I think there's opportunities for improvement across the board for all of us.
Yeah, I have a very high regard for people who've worked in civil service, government service. All kidding aside, I don't think we should underestimate the amount of sacrifice and the amount of hard work that goes into it. And I think in a lot of ways, we do the same to our teachers. We don't appreciate their effort and their toil and their sweat and tears. We just are unhappy with certain results, and if we don't like the results, we complain. So you make a good point about the government, where half the country hates what you're doing, half the country doesn't care.
Well, and to build on your point about teachers, Hersh, I had hoped that if there was one thing that would come out of the COVID pandemic that we could all agree on, especially any of us who have children or were around children during the pandemic, it's that teachers are doing yeoman's work. They are doing some of the most important work on the planet, and we should pay our teachers more. We should treat them better. Sadly, we kind of forgot what it was like when those of us who have children had to be homeschooling parents at home or managing distance learning and all those things. And it's like suddenly it came back to school, and it's like, oh, let's just throw them back into school. And it's like, no, folks, there's an opportunity to double down on how we treat our teachers. Because if we look historically, the civilizations that treat their teachers the best succeed. Full stop. That this isn't open for debate and discussion. We have millennia of proof that when teaching and learning is fostered, is encouraged, is supported, is valued in a society, everyone in that society benefits. Everyone, not just the people at the top or the people at the bottom, literally the entire populace.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of room to mess with the future of society and civilization. It's not like we're doing so well.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything so right that we have all this leeway. So let's just screw up the education. Anyway, not to go too far afield, but it is interesting that you came from a place of working in the field of law, and then taking a look at businesses and how they run. Certainly there's somewhere in there a sense of order and a sense of justice and a sense of right and wrong. And that makes sense because that draws a line to how do you treat a customer. So tell me how that wing of the story took flight.
So I'm running my ad agency, my branding agency, and my job, what my clients hire me for, is to get new customers, to attract customers, to acquire customers. And I was doing projects for clients, and I was very fortunate that we were, ringing the bell. We were making the leads come in. We were closing the deals, and our clients were very happy with the results. But I wasn't fully satisfied, because I went to clients after they had launched a new product or a new service. I'd go back to them 3 months, 5 months, 10 months later and say, so how much has the business grown? And they would say, well, Joey, we brought in a bunch of new people, but we're really only up 2% over last year. And I'm like, how is this possible? How is it possible that you're rolling out new products, new services, and you're not growing? You're not increasing your profitability. You're not increasing your revenues. And what I realized is most organizations in all industries globally are good or over index on marketing and sales to the exclusion and detriment of paying attention to retention. How do we continue to do business with people who've already raised their hand and said they want to be customers? How do we continue to build personal and emotional connection and foster those relationships that lead to more business, that lead to referrals, that lead to great reviews online? All those things that our business wants, we need to be systematic and we need to be consistent in how we treat our people, whether those are customers or employees, if we want to achieve those end results.
Yeah. And I wonder how often companies draw a parallel between business development and customer service or customer retention. They probably think it's two wildly different things.
Hersh, not only do they think it's two wildly different things, they structure their businesses as if it was two wildly different things. What do you normally have? You have a marketing department, you have a sales department, then you have a customer service or an ops department. As a general rule, they all fight with each other. They're siloed. The handoffs, if you think about the typical handoff in a relay race, the runner runs the baton down the arm of the person in front of them into their hand, make sure they have a secure grip, and then that person accelerates out of the handoff. In the typical business, the one department will take the baton and throw it over the wall without even yelling, hey, there's something coming over the wall. And we expect the customer to feel cared for. We expect the race to continue. If you know anything about relay races, if the baton drops, you don't get to pick it up and keep running. You're disqualified. The same happens in business. If we drop the handoff from marketing to sales, from sales to customer service, from customer service to long-term account retention, we miss the opportunity to continue that relationship. It's like dropping the baton.
Yeah. And one of the things that I've advocated, with my background in PR, kind of these dual backgrounds in PR and creative. So, a lot of times communications is not considered creative. It's brand narrative, but not in the just do it sense, not in the commercials, but but I came from both worlds. I came up in the commercial world, copywriting, and then I was pressed into service doing PR and bios and press releases and all. So I came up with this, came up with a dual storytelling mindset. What I realized was companies need to start melding those two things together so that they're building their core message and their communications internally. And then all the people that work for them are getting the same message as the public gets, because by the time it gets to the public, it would have been curated and finessed and fine-tuned within the organization. But that's not how a lot of people do it. Now they call me. Now clients do know to come to somebody like me and say, oh, can you unify the company, because we have employees that are unhappy that they are not part of they would rather be the customer. They see how the customer gets treated in a certain case, and they don't get the same treatment as the customer. So that brings us a little segue to how to never lose an employee again. What are some of the thoughts that are in that book?
Well, Hersh, it's interesting you mentioned the transition between the customer experience and the employee experience. Again, in many organizations, these are treated as separate concepts. Customer experience is overseen by marketing or sales or customer accounts management or service or operations. Employee experience is overseen by HR. If you're big enough to have an HR program. If you don't have an HR program, employee experience is usually overseen by, that would be no one, or whenever the founder or the leader has enough time. The problem with this is it misses the point that customer experience and employee experience are two sides of the same coin. As we polish one side, the value of the other side increases. If you've got customers that are absolutely thrilled, it's more exciting to come to work as an employee because you're going to be dealing with people who are happy. If you've got employees that hate their jobs and are miserable, if you're a customer, you walk in and you're like, do I even want to do business here? What is actually going on? So they feed off each other. And what we know to be true is that if you get the customer experience right, you retain a customer long-term. In the same way, if you get the employee experience right, you retain an employee long-term. And so it all comes back to this umbrella conversation of experience equals retention. The better experience, the more retention. And when we improve retention, that increases sales, that increases profitability, that increases efficiency, productivity, morale, all the things we're hoping to have in our lives, especially our business lives, get better when we focus on experience designed to propel us to retention.
Yeah. And that is a very interesting area to go. I don't want to go too deep in there before asking you about the kind of structure of your own business and how you have grown this business. Now we understand. Now we have a sense of your expertise, but how you've now built this business of your own and your brand image. And obviously I can see your image is very cohesive with your beliefs and your what you try to teach clients. But tell me how you work.
Well, I try to have it be that way. So thank you for that compliment, Hersh.
Sure.
You know, when I first started out, like many entrepreneurs starting out, I was a solo entrepreneur. I needed to get that first client. I needed to figure out what I was doing. And I'm also a big believer that there's something to be said for doing all the jobs in your business before you hire someone else to do the jobs in your business. I think you'll learn more. I think you have a different perspective. I'm not saying it's always going to work that way. And if you're a serial entrepreneur and you've already had a couple businesses, you might have learned that there's certain areas you don't have the skill set.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you have to go learn those, but I slowly built the team. And by the time my ad agency was up and running, the model I had created is I was always an employee of the company and I was the creative director. But I would bring onto the team on a project by project basis, graphic designers, product designers, web coders, copywriters, additional strategists. So I would almost build these teams, and I'm dating myself a little bit, but this is in the early 2000s. This wasn't as common. I would build teams for projects to deliver the best perspective we could, the best voices, the best talent, the best aesthetic for that brand and for that industry. And then at the end of that project, we would kind of disband and I'd move on to the next project. And sometimes I'd bring back those same people. Sometimes we'd bring back new people. So my team was always growing and contracting like an accordion in terms of the people I was working with. Then I went through a stretch when I first started my speaking business where it was just me. I was bottle washer, I was salesperson, I was the guy giving the speeches, designing the slide decks, etc. And in the last, I'll say, to be candid, year or so, I've started to expand the team again. I got a speaking agent who's not a W-2 employee, but we have a relationship where she represents on a commission type basis. I've got a director of details, which some people might call a personal assistant, but I call her the director of details because she does an amazing job keeping me in the time zone I'm supposed to be in, jumping from speech to podcast, to book writing, to client consulting call, etc. I've got somebody who does spot work on social media graphics and things like that. I've got somebody who does kind of spot strategic work with our email list and some of the promotions we do. And then as I do things like launching a book, I bring in experts who can help me on kind of a project basis to build it out. But it's a long about way of saying is I have kept most of my teams rather small in recent years, although I have had experience working in larger law firms and consulting firms where I had more direct reports and bigger teams. I kind of like the nimble and fast model a little better.
Yeah, I can agree with you because I think that, you know, the experience that you had when you were overseeing teams, assembling teams, doing the accordion thing, expanding and contracting, you know, that was all yes, it served you as the agency owner, but it was all there to serve the client.
100%.
And that means that there was another team, another set of eyes, another set of hands, all on that whole package. And I think probably, you know, doing this, having this world that you're creating around in your orbit is at least, you know, at the center of it is your personal brand. And it's serving your personal brand, and you can use that as kind of a bellwether, so that if the social people are doing their job right, it's a good reflection on you. But you don't have a brand that's coming in saying, "Oh, well, who's that social person you hired?" You know, because at the very least, it's kind of consolidated. And I think, and as you reach a certain level of experience, that might be refreshing because you know you're building something that's a little more, you have some very direct influence on it and vice versa.
Absolutely. And I think when we look, Hersh, at the people we choose to work with, our teammates, we're probably statistically going to spend more time with these people than we spend with our spouse or our significant other or our children or our parents. Shouldn't we be strategic about who we hang out with? Shouldn't we want to? I mean, I love hanging out with my team. Now, to be clear, my team all works remotely. The closest member of my team is about 4.5 hours, 5 hours by car is the closest member of the team. And many members of the team that work for me are plane rides. You're not going to want to make a drive to get there. But I like the idea of having a team that has a common goal, has a common ethos, has a common approach. And this idea of, to your point, when you shared that, my business model has always been designed to serve my clients as well as me. I never want it to be a situation where a client says, they invited 4 people to this meeting and then they billed us for all of that. I think they're just padding the invoice. I'm like, no. All my projects are flat fee. There's no hourly billing. You know what you're going to get. And if we need to have 3 people in the room, I'm going to bring 3 people to the room. But if we only need to have 1, I'm only going to bring 1. I'm going to respect your time and their time by right sizing the project to what the project needs.
And what's a typical project like?
So the bulk of my projects fall into one of 2 categories: speaking or consulting. Speaking usually looks like this. Hey, Joey, we're hosting an event. We'd like you to be the keynote speaker. We have some conversations to talk about the speech. I get on a plane, I fly to the venue, I walk on stage, I give the speech, I walk off stage, I get on the plane, I fly to the next event. That's often the way it looks. I obviously spend time hanging out with the crowd and connecting with the client and things like that before and after. But that's kind of, for lack of a better way of putting it, it often skews a little more like, hey, this is a one-off event. We want to have you come speak. This is what it's going to look like. On the consulting side, it's helping companies to build their customer experience journey or their employee experience journey. And we primarily focus on the first 100 days because the research shows the first 100 days of a relationship are the most important time in the entire relationship, whether that's customers or employees.
Sure.
And the research also shows that a significant number of people will decide to quit you, as the kids say, in that first 100 days. It's 20 to 70% on the customer side, depending on your organization. It's 20 to 60% on the employee side, depending on your organization and industry. So these are huge numbers of people that are leaving before they've even reached the 100-day anniversary. So the consulting projects usually are longer projects. It's me coming in person and a combination of virtual consulting activities where it's figuring out what is the current journey. How do we figure out the way to make that journey better? And then what are the tactical communications, deliverables, experiences that we have to build out to achieve our goal of creating remarkable interactions?
Now, as many people as you can help, you have a pretty specific B2C niche, or B2B niche.
I actually work with B2C companies and B2B companies. I mean, to be candid, Hersh, I actually think that sometimes we have a tendency as business owners to get overly siloed into those labels. Everybody I work with is committed to H to H. That's human to human interactions. They want to build an H to H business. Now, whether that's selling to an individual or an organization kind of doesn't matter because the organizations, guess what? They have humans working within those organizations. So I've yet to find, and if anybody listening or watching, if you have customers or employees who are not human, please reach out to me. My website is joeycoleman.com and let me know because I'd love to learn more about that business. I haven't found one yet that doesn't have human beings involved.
Well, if everybody's kind of hysteria is to be believed, then there's a concern of AI, replacing us. And it is kind of a funny idea for a short film that Joey Coleman would be sitting down with an AI, and saying, okay, well, why don't you tell me how you feel? Because I can convey to management that, there's a certain lack of everybody's
the AI is feeling neglected.
The AI is feeling like they're getting blamed for everything. They're, the prompts are irrational.
Never get a day off or vacation, expected to be working 24/7, overworked and undervalued.
What about the AI?
I can see it build out. Yeah, exactly.
What about the AI? Okay. So speaking of your audience, how do you stay in touch with your audience? Well, how do your clients hear about you? How do they come to you other than now that you've been on my podcast? It's
Well,
not even a
exactly. I mean,
question.
now it's
Not
going to
even a
be
question anymore.
because I was involved in the Yes Brand podcast. That's
right.
exactly why they brought me here. There's a couple of different ways that people find me. As you might imagine, people read my books and say,
Yes.
oh, I like this. We'd like to have more of this, either as a speaker or a consultant. I thankfully give enough speeches to enough audiences that there are people in the crowd that go, I want some of that at our company, or that speech would go really well at this trade association I'm a part of, or my EO group that I'm in, or whatever it may be. So a lot of it happens that way. And then referrals. One of my main goals, Hersh, is whenever I take the stage, and I don't say this from a place of ego as much as I say it as an internal driver and motivator for me. I want as many people as possible, if not everyone in the audience, to be able to say, Joey Coleman's presentation was the best presentation I've ever seen on any topic in any venue. If they answer yes to that question, they are going to want to refer me. They are going to want to say nice things about me. They are going to want to hire me. And so I just try to deliver remarkable presentations as a way to continue to market and grow my business.
That's fantastic. It's a wonderful way of looking at it. Because if somebody were to say, well, in order to do a good presentation on this topic, I'm going to need to do A, B, C, D, and blah, blah, blah. And therefore, it may be a really great presentation on that topic. But if someone says, look, my goal is to hit it out of the park. I want it to be so good that the same way you would come back from a concert or come back from something else and say, I just have to find a way. I have to tell somebody about this.
Exactly.
And that makes you memorable. And clearly it works. So tell us what's on the horizon. What I like to have guests do is, even though it's not New Year's, I think every day is a great day to set goals. Mm-hmm. I ask guests, what would be a resolution that you would make over the next 12 months? I want to blank.
Yeah, this is both a really fascinating question, Hersh, and a very timely one, because I have something that fits directly into that.
Okay.
In the next 6 months, I am trying to figure out what the next decade of my life and career looks like. I had the chance to turn 50 this year, and I'm looking at 50 to 60. And the joy I've had, my 20s were better than my teens. My 30s were better than my 20s. My 40s were better than my 30s. Now that I'm into my 50s, my goal is, how can I make my 50s my best decade yet? In every category: work, personal, family, health, wealth, experiences, perspective, empathy. Fill in the blanks of all the buckets I would like to deepen my connection to learning, to growth, to opportunity, to possibility. And so what I'm really spending time right now focused on is, what are the strategic decisions and the choices I want to make over the course of the next decade? And to be completely transparent, I think it's going to require saying no more often, to really double down on the things that absolutely matter and are part of what I'm trying to accomplish, instead of all the amazing opportunities and possibilities and distractions and squirrel and all the things that might impact someone's life. I like this idea of, what would it be like to maybe widen the aperture of life experiences, but close the aperture in terms of my focus and my effort and where I'm directing that.
First of all, that's a great answer. It's an exciting answer. It's brimming with possibility. Are there areas that you feel you haven't, like, it's a logical thing to say, okay, I've done, the way you laid it out makes perfect sense. But are there areas that you've said, man, I wanted to live in this such and such a place, or I wanted to live this way or do this thing? Are there any specific ones that you haven't done?
Well, I'll say this, and let me put a disclaimer on the front of this, that I've had the pleasure and the opportunity to have remarkable experiences and incredible opportunities. I like to think that I don't take that for granted. And I like to be as cognizant of the privilege that I've had and the experiences I've had. With that kind of opening volley and caveat, I want to continue to experience the best life has to offer. Now, the best life has to offer could be a bigger stage with a bigger audience, or it could be a longer walk on the beach with my wife and my two boys. It's a yes and it's not an either or. And so what I'm trying to do is figure out ways to maximize all those pieces. I was in a conversation not too long ago where a young person early in their career, probably early to mid 20s, was telling me about all the things that they had accomplished, and in their words, all the things they had mastered. And they kept using this word mastered. And I said, well, is there, and it's somewhat facetiously, after 45 minutes of talking with not coming up for air, this person literally had been talking for 45 minutes straight. I said, somewhat facetiously, was there anything you haven't mastered? And this person said, well, I haven't mastered international taxation law. And I haven't mastered, e-commerce in this particular niche in Central Africa. And I haven't mastered this. And they then said to me, well, Joey, what have you mastered? And I said, oh, I actually can answer that one pretty easily. And they're like, oh, really? What is it? And I said, yeah, that'd be nothing. I haven't mastered anything. I like to think that I am on the road towards mastery in a couple of key areas. But have I reached the destination? Absolutely not. I'm more a fan of taking a phrase from Cervantes where he said, the road is more interesting than the inn, meaning the journey is better than the destination. I've built the last 50 years out of that philosophy, and it's turned out pretty well. So I'm planning to continue to double down on trying to enjoy the road and the journey. To your point, some specific things since you asked, I'd love to have an extended period of time living abroad. I've had the pleasure of traveling to 54 countries and counting. I always try to be to more countries than I am years old, but I would love to do a longer stint, stay in one place for maybe 3 months, 6 months, have that experience. I'm a big fan of the concept of 18 summers that's promoted by my good friends, Jim and Jamie Shields, which is when you are a parent, you have 18 summers with your kids before they leave the house. I'm more than halfway through the 18 summers with my oldest and coming up on halfway mark with my youngest. So I really want to double down on more time with them. And to be frank, the most fascinating person I have ever met on the planet is my incredible wife. And more time with her, more time learning from her, being with her, experiencing with her. Oh my goodness, I want to double down on more of that too. So it's kind of like yes, and I've got a couple of things that I'm thinking I'm going to be working on.
All right.
If you liked the show,
Yes, and
it worked for you,
yes, then
subscribe and leave a
yes, friend.
5-star review.
Yes, friend.
Tell all your friends.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Did I make it clear?
Yes, friend.
Get your branding on
Yes.
before they're gone.
Yes.